Hi, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this month's webinar. Tonight, with the ADINJC, you've got myself presenting. I'm Ed Marshall, and we've got Lin Western with us tonight. We can say Lin tonight because we haven't got two Lins this evening, so it's nice and simple this evening with the presenting. Evening, Lin.
Evening.
And tonight's webinar, guys and girls, is all about autonomous vehicles and connected autonomy. And just before we start moving into this, we have got the questions that are the question box, which is down here. I was just looking for it. Which there's a question box on your panel on the right hand side. If you want to type any questions you want to ask Lin about this, feel free to ask questions as we go through. What I'll do, Lin, is if I get any questions, I'll just try and jump in and get your attention, stop you midway, and we'll ask a question as related to what it is. And we'll sort of leave it with you because you know more about this. You've been attending some conferences this year and found out about it.
Yeah, I definitely have. Right, so evening all. I don't know if any of you were at the last conference, the last meeting where I did a presentation on it there. It's basically the same presentation I'm going to do tonight. So for the NJC, I actually attended 2 meetings and a show. The 2 meetings, the first one was in January, 19th of January, and that was hosted by the Westminster Energy, Environment and Transport Forum. Now, this is a completely partial cross-party group. There's no policy agenda whatsoever. It's attended by everybody you can think of, really, government, all interested parties. So there was lots of people there. The aim was to provide a premier environment for policymakers to engage with key stakeholders. So in other words, they were wanting information off us as much as we were getting information back from them. So that was an interesting conference. It opened my eyes. I sort of went to the conference very naively thinking that autonomous cars were not going to be in my lifetime, and I came away thinking a little bit different. The second one I went to was the connected and autonomous motoring policy. Now this one was completely different. This one is hosted privately. It's not run by the government at all. So this one is hosted by independent people, and they are running it as because they believe everyone deserves a say in public policy issues. So Policy UK is a platform for other people to just discuss the industry and discuss what's going on. So it's both very interesting, both completely different. The DVSA weren't at the first one, but they were at the second one, which was interesting. And then in June, I went to a tech show up in London. I went with Peter for this. And it was a tech show. So there was lots of tech there, but there was autonomous cars. The main thing there, though, is a lot of software people, because software is one of the biggest things with autonomous cars. But I'll come back to that later. Right, so at the 2 meetings, you can see there was quite a lot of people attending. So there was 100 at the first one and 87 at the second one. Sorry, 84 at the second one. And if you look at the list, you can see there's quite a wide variety of people attending. The first one was a lot more government orientated. Second one was a little bit more private industry orientated. So both very interesting. Moving on. So what are connected and autonomous cars? How much do you know about them? I knew very little when I went. I don't know how much you knew, Ed, before I did the last talk.
Only a little, really, from what my car's got. And I've had a couple of cars now. My wife had a VW Passat that would, as we were talking earlier, would do bay parking and it would do the parallel park. And my A200 now will do the parallel park. And we were trying to work out what level that was at, and we think it's at level 2 because I can actually take my hands off the steering wheel and it'll steer automatically. And
Yeah.
that's part of what we're talking when we see the levels. So I wasn't sure about what connected meant and what autonomous meant. So that bit was sort of new to me.
Yeah, so a connected car is more talking about being connected to the internet. So the connected cars are cars that have internet connection. They are cars that supply information to the driver, but they don't actually take control of the car. So they give information to the driver so the driver can take control. Give lots of early warning signs. The first connected car was released in America in 1996, and it was released by General Motors. And they had a system on it called OnStar. And all that was a verbally activated. If there was an accident, you could call for help. You had to have a mobile phone in the car, but it actually called for help. So 1996, quite a while ago,
Yes.
they started with connected cars. So that's a connected car. It's all the connections are all about our navigation systems, or where the cars talk to each other. So the vehicles now can actually communicate with each other. And what they're doing is gathering information and feeding it back to a main source. They're giving service warning signs. So if we've got fleet cars, the fleet management teams now can know when cars need servicing before the people know when they need servicing. Black boxes now. All the kids are having to have black boxes when they go into the car, and these black boxes are gathering loads of information on the way people are driving, where they're driving, what times of the day they're driving. So they're all connected. So connected cars are anything that's got an internet connection or can talk to other vehicles or its surroundings. So that's the difference with a connected car. It doesn't actually take control of the car, but it gives us information and passes information to other people. An autonomous car, this is where the car can do certain things for us. Now, an autonomous car means having this power of self-governance, which means it can actually take control. Not completely sometimes, not until you get to a higher level, but it can take control. It's capable of sensing its environment. It knows where it is and it can sense what's going on around it. So it can make decisions for us. It can help us make decisions. There's 6 different levels with this. So if you want to move the slide on, Ed.
Yep. So get that to work. There we go. Yeah, it might just take a second for it to come up.
Okay, so we've got 6 different levels. So level 0 is the old-fashioned car. It's the car that it didn't even have an automatic choke. It had a choke that we used to pull out. I mean, I don't know how many people remember that, but I do, unfortunately. Yeah. My first driving school called that. It was very handy, actually, because you could use it as an accelerator, I always found. If you were in trouble, you could pull the choke out and get out a little bit of trouble. But sadly, we don't have those anymore. So what we mainly drive, most of us drive now, I would think, is a level 1. So a level 1 is some sort of driving modes. So we're going to have things like single task assistance. So emergency brake assist is a level 1 task. There's not much there. We were discussing this earlier before we came on air, Ed and myself.
Yeah.
We were discussing what Ed's got on his car and whether we thought it was level 1 or level 2. Level 1 are cars where you have to have your hands on the wheel and eyes on the road. So that is the difference with a level 1. There are things to give. For instance, my car has parking sensors, so when it goes back, it will bleep. But that's just giving me information, but it's not assisting me at all. So that would make mine a level 1, whereas Ed's actually parks itself. He can take his hands off the wheel and it parks itself. So that would make it a level 2. So a level 2 car is something that you can temporarily take your hands off, i.e. if you were doing a reverse park, you said yours reverse parks, didn't you?
Yeah, parallel parks. So you just basically let go of the steering wheel and you use your feet to control the speed and the braking, and then it'll actually ask you to change gear if it wants to go forwards again, So you might have to do a gear change, go forward, but all the steering is done by itself. It sorts the steering out using its sensors.
So that would be a level 2. So yours is a Mercedes A200?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Another one is the BMW Series 7. That's got park assist. That one, actually, you can walk away outside the car and it would park itself with a fob. So that one would be a level 2. So it's hands off and eyes temporarily off. You can actually take your eyes off of the road for it. So level 2 is only where you're still there, but you can temporarily take your hands off or temporarily take your eyes off. There's normally sensors with these as well that tell the car whether you're there and whether you're taking notice. Level 3 is the one that's a bit controversial. When I was at these meetings, the general consensus was level 3 was the level that everyone had concerns with. And when I say everybody, it was sort of across the board. Most people had at least some concern over it.
What were those concerns, Lynn?
Right, well, the concerns are that it is more and autonomous, so it will drive itself more. You can, if you're in certain situations, so say on a motorway, the car would drive itself. But if it gets into extreme problems, it will hand control back to you and ask you to take control. Now, the problem with this is that because you can take your hands off and your eyes off, people are worried that, are you going to lose concentration? Are you going to not know what's going on around you? Are you going to start watching a film? Or are you going to nod off? So, and then, as we know, when these situations arise, they arise very quickly. Are you going to have time to take control?
Well, there's been some study done about how long it takes to take the control back as well, hasn't there?
Yes.
That can take quite a long time in some cases, up to 30 or 40 seconds to actually get the person to assimilate what's going off. Because not only do you have to take the controls back, you've got to start to take in the environment and work out what's going on.
Well, this is a problem. If you've got your eyes off of the road and a situation occurs, you're not aware of that situation. So, as we know, we've got to be aware before we can take action. So, if we're being told to take action and we're not even aware of what's going on around us, it's going to take us a few seconds to become aware and know what action's needed. So level 3 is the one that people have concerns with. We were just talking about this just now. There's actually a level 3 being released this September. The Audi A8 is being released in September. Now, it's very, very limited. There's very, very limited to what it's going to be allowed to do. I'm not sure if it's going to be released in this country or just in Germany to start with because of the legislation, but what they're going to do with the Audi A8, I've actually put it on Facebook. If anyone wants to have a look on the ADINJC Facebook, you'll find it on there. It's going to be restricted to you can only use it when you're in congestion. And then you can only use it up to 37 miles an hour. So if the traffic starts flowing over 37 miles an hour, it will stop working. Also, there has to be a barrier down the road between you and the oncoming traffic for it to come into you. So it's a small step, but it's a start. It's the first one that's going to go on the road, and they're going to test how it works.
The scary thing for me when I was reading that article, Lynn, was that if you don't take control back, it will bring the car to a halt in the lane. Now, if that traffic's now starting to flow faster, over 37 miles per hour, and you don't take control back and it brings that car to a halt in lane 3 or 2,
is the car going to do? Yeah.
Yeah, that could be a little bit hairy.
Yeah, I've got mixed. I like to see the car and I'd like to have a go, but I've got mixed opinions myself. I don't know whether it should be mode.
I don't think it should bring the car to a halt, because if it can drive at 37 miles an hour, surely the car will be better at 37 miles per hour in lane 1, continually driving, rather than coming to a standstill.
I agree. I think perhaps there should be a restriction on what lanes they can go in. I don't know where they're even going to be allowed to drive it at the moment. It's only going to be on certain roads.
Yeah, yeah. Wasn't that something that you talked about? That I don't know whether it was you that mentioned it at the meeting or whether I've heard it at Leeds, but they're talking about if it does come in this country that they will restrict it to certain lanes, like lane 1 and 2.
Well, they were talking about this. It was sort of a vague thing that was being bantered about how they were going to manage this. There's no set rules with it, or anyone's made any decisions yet. But the general consensus was maybe that on motorways, lane 1 would be unautonomous lorries.
Yeah.
Lane 2 would be unautonomous cars, and lane 3 would be other.
Yeah.
So cars that weren't unautonomous. It was just an idea that was bantered around. There's no set rules for it yet, but that was how they were going along the way of thinking maybe it could work. But what we've got to remember is there's not only going to be unautonomous cars, there's going to be unautonomous lorries, which are probably going to come in before the cars, in general speaking. So I would think, from speaking to the lorry drivers, they're a little bit more advanced than we are with the cars. They've done a lot more testing with the lorries than they have with have they? I don't know.
Yeah, they've been doing platooning abroad. They were going to start trials in this country with platooning here, which is they connected 6 vehicles. I know we've got a slide on it later, but they fell short doing it here because of legislation, wasn't it?
Yeah, the problem was legislation's got into Parliament, but obviously because we had the election, everything got stopped. And now because of Brexit, everything's being stopped, being slowed down. So it will come through. The legislation is going through, but it's taking its time. So level 3 is cars that can drive themselves in certain situations, but will need you to step in occasionally to help out. These aren't going to be able to be driving end-to-end journeys. You're not going to be able to drive these cars from home to work. There's going to be certain places you can drive them. You're not going to be able to drive them all the time. Level 4, which is, I think most people would like to see it jump from level 2 to level 4. Just let's miss out level 3. Level 4 is nearly fully autonomous. So what it is, the car will be able to drive, let's say, on motorways, dual carriageways, set routes, and it will drive autonomously. But let's say, for instance, if I was driving from my house to my nearest motorway, which would be M25, I would probably have to drive the journey from my house to the M25, but then it would take over autonomously from the M25 and drive me, say I was going to Birmingham, I was going up to a meeting. It would take me up there, and then once I'd left the motorway, I'd have to take control again.
Yeah.
So you're still going to have a steering wheel. This car's still going to look the same as a car does now. It's still going to have pedals. It's still going to have the steering wheel. But the difference is it will do a lot more for us. It will do a lot more autonomously. And it will be able to make decisions for us. So a level 4 is really more desirable than a level 3. It's not going to need us to take action quite as often. A level 5 is fully autonomous. There won't be a steering wheel. The vehicle will be basically a pod of various sizes. Nothing's been decided yet, but there won't even be a steering wheel. I've actually seen a couple of cars where the steering wheel disappears, and I'm presuming this is going to be a level 4. They haven't confirmed it yet, but I'm presuming that's going to be a level 4, that when you put it into an autonomous mode, the steering wheel actually disappears behind the dashboard.
That was on Horizon, wasn't it? The programme week on Horizon, they were showing that one.
Yeah, that was good, that programme. So that's how autonomous cars work. That's the different levels. First one, as we say, September this year, level 3. They're hoping that level 4s are going to come in 2020.
Right.
All of the manufacturers that we're speaking to are all aiming for 2020, 2021. So it's looking that way. It's looking like it will head that way. Most of them have the cars developed already. So
Ford are aiming for 2021, aren't they? I saw an article on that. I think it was today or yesterday.
Sorry?
Ford are aiming for 2021. I was reading an article.
Yeah, Ford are actually the last ones, funny enough. They're the ones with the longest date away.
Mm.
There's a lot of cars a lot earlier than that. Tesla are a lot further ahead, obviously.
Yes.
Um, they're much, much further ahead. We were speaking about that earlier. You were saying about,
Yeah,
when were you saying you?
the Tesla 3 that I'm seriously thinking about, because the Tesla 3 comes out. Hopefully, they're hoping to release it into the UK next September. And you can already put £1,000 down for one of those, a returnable deposit. I haven't gone so far as putting a deposit down, but they're looking at that car being fully electric, rear wheel drive to start with, then moving towards four wheel drive. With the rear wheel drive unit, they're talking about it'll be able to do 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. The speed that they accelerate is phenomenal. And if they get it into the four wheel drive mode, they're thinking that it will come down to 3 seconds. Well, that's going to be a little bit too quick for teaching learner drivers. But yeah, the battery life is the one thing that they're really extending now. They're talking about 250 miles on a full charge with these lithium batteries.
Right. Talking of the batteries, I was reading an article yesterday. It was nothing to do with and autonomous cars, funny enough. It was to do with street lighting. There was a conference about street lighting and general lighting, and someone was discussing charging points. They were talking about putting charging points in across the country, and it was brought up that have we not got thousands of charging points already? And everyone was a bit confused, and they said lampposts.
Right.
And it was sort of a light bulb moment, excuse the pun. And they like, why can't they just put charging points into lampposts? So I think it's one of those things that's just come up, and people are now thinking, that could be a way forward with electric cars.
Yeah.
It could be a very easy, cheap way of putting charging points in.
Yeah.
So that was just something that came up as I read another bit.
Yeah, the most expensive thing about getting the electric cars is putting a charge point in. But there is some help from the government with that as well. But we digress a little.
Yes, we digress. Okay, so pros and cons. There's pros and cons here. Productive working time. So if you were in an autonomous car, you could actually work if you wanted to. You could use emails, read emails, you can read a book. So is that good? Is that a pro or is that a con? I can't make my mind up. If you're in a car and then you've got extended working hours, I'm not sure if that's a pro or con personally. Sometimes it might be a pro, sometimes it might be a con. It's a bit like having a mobile phone. Computer. The computer can't get distracted, so the accident rates are going to come down. I've got some information about accident rates actually later on, which are quite horrendous. I've just got them from the government website. So accident rates would be lowered. They're saying 94% of accidents are human error. Well, I've read a lot of articles about this, and I'm not sure I agree with 94%. The figures, if you look at the figures across the world, it varies from 65% to 95%. So it's somewhere in that region. It's not definitely 94%, it's somewhere in that region. Platooning can be implemented to gain road space. So platooning can be done with lorries or cars. Basically, you can drive a lot closer than you could do in a normal car, because the car will know the braking distance and will be able to stop the car. Safer transportation for the elderly. So at the moment, if someone gets a little bit older and they can't drive, how do they get about? Whereas if we've got autonomous cars that can pick people up and take them places, it's going to definitely give a lot more people a lot more freedom for a lot longer. You know, there is a cost involved, but
that's quite interesting, that then, because I went to Help Speed of Sight yesterday. They ran an event near us, and I was there, and there was actually somebody travelled from Manchester to where we were at Wunwell, which means they had to travel to Sheffield, change at Sheffield, and then get to Wunwell. And then to get from Wunwell Station, which is about half an hour walk or a 5-minute bus ride, down to where we were. And they did that by themselves, and they were virtually blind. They had little sort of, they could see hazy sort of shapes, but they couldn't really see where the footpath or anything was, that she had to walk with a stick. And it was amazing that she'd actually made this journey on her own. But you get the autonomous vehicles, and then they're just going to be able to pick her up and fetch her if she can get to like points. And I know one of your things is about the end mile, isn't it? One of your slides about the end mile, and it really was the end mile that was the hardest part for her. Yeah, actually getting in Manchester and even changing at Sheffield was easy. All the travel, that part of the travel was the easiest. It was the last bit at the end that took her nearly as long to get from Wombwell station to the track as it did to get from Manchester to Wombwell.
Wow. Did you say it was Warmwell?
Wombwell, yes. It's a funny sort of name, isn't it? It's near, sort of right out in the middle of the sticks between the M1 and the A1, around Barnsley area.
Right. Okay. Oh, yeah, that was good, that speed of sight. I enjoyed that. Yeah. The other thing that the advantage would be that we wouldn't be having moving violations, so parking tickets, speeding tickets, because the cars would know what they can do and when they can do it. So hopefully we're not going to be getting speeding tickets in the future. Driving in bus lanes, we shouldn't get those either. The car park itself, so the long-term future is that we'll be able to get out of the car and the car will just go off and park itself. We don't even have to find the space for it. It will go off and find its own space and then come back and pick you up later. I think that's quite a few years away.
You might go do another job in between.
Yeah, it's very nice. Nice to think of it. And the other thing is you always have a designated driver. Again, this is quite a long way off, and this has got to be a level 5. At the moment, it's looking like you're going to have to have a driving license right up until level 5. Level 5 is the one where you won't need a driving license. Anyone will be able to get in the car and just be driven because there is no driving to be done. But level 5 is quite a long way off. The cons.
There was that people that are being born now, they may be the generation that won't do a driving license.
I know. I actually said this to a lad I was teaching the other day. Him and his wife had just had a baby, and we had this discussion, and we said his son might be the first of the generations not to get a driving license. Yeah. That's 17 years away, so I think that's maybe achievable. I think that could be the first generation that doesn't have a driving license out of choice. They might choose not to have a driving license. You can still get a driving license, I would think, for other things, but I would think there will be an option at that point to not have one.
I can see it quite easily coming to that in like the major cities. I've just taught somebody that's moved from London to York, and they didn't have a driving license. They had a sort of partially grown up family, 3, 4, 5-year-old kids. And they had never had the need at that point to have a driving license because the network of underground was so good that they just didn't bother. And driving around London is a waste of time anyway. But that's already sort of starting to be the case where some families are giving up the cars already.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that they're going to look at later on. It's something I'll come to in a little while about one of the initiatives they're looking at. A few more cons. Computer hacking. Everybody seems to be very worried about this, especially with the NHS hacking a little while back. There seems to be talk now that they've got around this to a certain degree by using satellites. There's been a couple of satellites. I believe there's one up there already, and one going up shortly, I believe. So they're talking about putting one going this way around the world and one this way around the world because you'll have better coverage. So at the moment, if you use the internet coverage, if you saw the map of the internet coverage, it's very limited. But if you actually look at the map of the satellite coverage, it was something like 98%. It was very, very high. So, and the only bits they couldn't cover were the bits that were under the sea. So looks like it's going to be satellite controlled rather than internet controlled. Con, more work time. Do we really want more work time? Maybe. maybe not. Less jobs in the driving industry, which is a big one, which obviously is going to concern a lot of people. What are we going to do? Are we going to have jobs? I think we're a long, long way off of this, so I'm not overly concerned at the moment, but it's obviously something to food for thought. What way is it going? I can't ever see the driving licence going completely, because people will want it for other things, but it's definitely something to think about. Right, so moving on. We've got the next slide, Ed, please.
It's coming up.
Okay. Lovely. What is intelligent mobility? Right, now, at the first conference I went to, there's a group called Catapult, and they've set up this, what is intelligent mobility? Intelligent mobility is all about, this slide that you're looking at the moment, there's lots of little bubbles there and they're very hard to read. But basically, it's all the different things that are going to be needed for intelligent mobility. So what intelligent mobility does is it encompasses everything from autonomous cars to seamless journeys to multimodal modelling software, which, if you understand that, you're a better person than I. Intelligent mobility uses all the emerging technologies. So what they're looking at is all the different things that are going to be needed to use to get ultra-autonomous cars, and how they can do it really smartly and greenly. They're looking at trying to get it over to electric, as we know this has been coming for a long while. And they're looking at different approaches and different ways of doing this. So Catapult have been asked to do a couple of surveys. Catapult is just one of 11 elite technology companies that have been asked to look at all these different things. And Catapult have been asked to do 2 surveys. The first one was traveller needs, which I'll come to in a minute. But these surveys have led to what you're seeing in front of you, these slides here now. And one of the things that came out of these traveller surveys was, as Ed said earlier, the last mile. People want to find the most difficulty with the last mile, the first mile and the last mile. So if you want to get to a station or from a station, how would you do it? So they're actually working on these little pods that you can see at the moment. There's a few companies that have got together, and this is what Catapult's all about. They're trying to put the companies together. So in this case, they've put RDM together, who actually manufacture these pods that you can see in front of you. So they're the actual manufacturers of the pods. There's another company called Oxbotica, which is a company that's come from Oxford University. It was 2 guys that were at Oxford University together, and they've put this company together. They are the people that have invented the brain behind the pod. So Catapult are putting these people together, and then they've got together with Milton Keynes Council, and what they've done is come up with this ingenious way of putting these pods on the road just to trial them. It cost them £3 million to put this together, but they say in advertising revenue, so advertising the project itself and the pods and the different companies, they think that they've generated £120 million worth of revenue from these 3 million.
Wow.
So it just goes to show how much money there is involved in this. The whole industry itself, they're looking at £900 billion a year worldwide. So we're looking at big money involved in this. There's a lot of money being put into it. So these little pods that you can see, they've been trialled in Milton Keynes and various other places, and people just get in them and they will take them the last mile, as it says. So it will take them from point A to point B. It just goes along the pavement, it goes along with the people, and they can sense what's going on around it, and the people love them. There's been absolutely no problems with them. There's been massive demand for them. So they're looking at rolling these out in different places just to keep trialling them. So they look like fun. I'd like to have a go at one. I've not had a go in one yet. Have you had
How
a
many
go?
people can get in those? Is it just a two-seater?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, at the moment, yeah, it's just a two-seater. So, and they just take you the last mile. This is what they're saying they're having problems with. It's people getting to stations and from stations. So if you just go on to the next slide, Ed.
Mm. I see that. It's coming up now.
That's it. These are the Catapult have done these two surveys. The first one was traveller needs. Now they surveyed 10,000 people and they were looking at what they needed. They asked them questions about what they wanted. So the things that came out of these, if anybody wants to do these surveys, I'll have a look at them. They're on the website. So if you go in, put in that you want to do the traveller needs survey, that will come up. It pops up straight away. Or mobility as a service survey, and that will come up as well. Now, the traveller needs, they ask people questions, loads and loads of questions they asked them. But what they wanted, the answers they got back were, they wanted pain points removed. So what a pain point is where you have to park the car at the station. So you've got to the station and now you're driving around for 10 minutes trying to find a parking space. You found your parking space, then you've got to walk 5 minutes back to get your parking ticket. Then you've got to go back to the car. It's pouring with rain. Now you've got to walk from the car to the train. I've missed the train. So these are what they call pain points and connections between trains. So we'll get to a major station, say in London, and you've got to get from one major station to another station. In London, it's not too bad because we have undergrounds, but some places they don't have the luxury of the undergrounds we have. So they were asking that they wanted these pain point removed. So this is what they're looking at, these pods, that they can pick you up from your house, take you to the station and leave you. It's like a glorified taxi, basically. It's the same process as a taxi. They want end-to-end journeys. So they want to be able to have an end-to-end journey planned for them. So I'm sure you've all come across the Uber app. Have you ever used the Uber app, Ed?
No, I've never used it. No.
No, have you not? No, it's very good. So the Uber app is where you just pump in where you want to go to, and it will give you a choice of whether you want to do a single ride or a shared ride, how long it's going to take for the taxis to get to you, what sort of taxi do you want? Do you want a luxury one or a basic one? And they'll give you all the different prices. So end-to-end journeys, they're looking at building big platform. They're called platforms, so that you'll have an app on your phone and you'll be able to say, I want to go to Birmingham. I live in Essex and I want to go to Birmingham. So you'll pump in where you want to go, and this app will work out how to get you there. It will work out the timings for you. It will then send a pod to come and pick you up, take you to the train station for the train, and then they work out all your timings for you. So when you get off the train the other end, there'll be a pod waiting for you to take you straight the way through. So it does all the work for you. You don't have to have cars, park them, organise cabs. The whole work will be done for you. And this is what they were saying, is the traveller wants to be engaged with it. They want to be able to use some sort of technology. There was a lot of figures that came out from this survey. 53% of travellers are always looking for an update to optimise their journey. They want to know if there's a better way of doing it.
Right.
Which is quite a high amount. 72% have smartphones, we know that. I'm surprised it was that low actually, 72%. And 54% already consider it essential to use as travel information. So people that are travelling on trains, buses, they're using it all the time to know what time the train's coming, the bus is coming. 57% of people wouldn't mind sharing their data with other services so that they could get a better service, which surprised me. I thought that was quite high. 39% would consider using a driverless car now.
Are these with this survey? Would you think it's people that do the commuting that's taken part in this? Is that why it was so high with the percentages? Did the target that sort of people?
No, they didn't target them. It was sent out.
It was just sent out.
Anybody,
Right.
anybody could sign up for it. So I don't know. Yeah, you could be right, maybe. But the figures that came out from it were quite surprising. 32% would share their possessions with others. So in other words, as you alluded to earlier, we won't have cars, we'll share them.
Yeah.
We'll just rent a pod. So yeah, some interesting information came out of that. The mobility as a service is a different type of sort of, wasn't really a survey, it was more information that they found out. And mobility as a service was looking at how they can help commuters, so the things that they would need to do to help a commuter. So they were looking at traditional forms of transport, so how they're going to put together buses, train drivers, cars, taxis, pods, how they're going to make all this work together. So mobility as a service is what they were looking at, how they were going to get all this to work. And the solutions were these platforms. We've got a lot of software companies that are actually working on these platforms now. Yeah. In fact, I think there's a big race going on to get these platforms right, because if it's anything like the Uber app, they're going to be worth a lot of money.
Well, that's the one that first to get in, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, that's it. So how are they going to move all this on forward? So they've created a roadmap of things that they need to do. Now, the Modern Transport Bill, so it's Vehicle Technology and Aviation Bill. This is the bill that went into Parliament, but it's been halted at the moment because of the election, etc. But that's going to go through, and this is saying how the cars can be tested on the roads, when they can be used, when they can't be used, how they're going to be used. So this is like the guidelines, the rules, how people are going to be able to do use these vehicles. Code of practice, again, how they're going to test the vehicles, because these vehicles are going to have to be tested. So they've had to make a code of practice. Insurance has had to be looked at, because how are we going to insure these vehicles? If they're driverless, who's responsible if there's an accident? So the insurance companies have had to be involved. Hardware and software, that's all having to be looked at. Infrastructure, the roads, we're going to have to look at signage on roads. It's got to be good enough for vehicles to be able to read it. Traffic signs, road markings. So there's quite a lot of infrastructure that's got to go in. And the timeline of when they're going to hoping to put all this lot together. So there's quite a lot of legislation that's got to go through yet, but it is going through. It's part of the framework that's going on behind the scenes at the moment. We've talked about cars, but there's a lot going on with the lorries as well, platooning with the lorries. We talked about this earlier, that they were talking about practice, trialling it in this country, but because of the legislation, they couldn't do it, unfortunately. They have trialled it in Belgium. They drove it from Westerlo in Belgium to Rotterdam in Holland last year. And the car the lorry drove in a platoon the whole way across. So it was quite successful. Trials are due to start on the M6, but we're not sure when. I think they're waiting for the legislation to come through. They've got a timeline they've set out for this, as you can see there. They're looking at 2016, they were going to start the platooning, which they did last year. Multi-vendor platooning is the next thing they're going to look at. So at the moment, this was just done by DAF, but they're looking at putting DAF and Volvo together and being able to drive different lorries. So it's the same with the cars. The cars will always work together. So it doesn't matter what make it is, they will all be able to work together. And then 2019, they're looking at doing international corridors. So the same sort of thing, principle as with with the cars. They'll only work in certain areas, and motorways basically, but they're looking at seeing if they can get an international corridor across England and Europe that you could platoon the lorry all the way across. So that's something that's coming. I think that will probably come in before the cars. So insurance, we're talking about insurance. Now, the insurances have had a really hard job, I think. They've all got together and they've got a consortium together now, so it's called ADIG, Automated Driving Insurance Group. And if you can look at this, you can see most of the major insurance companies are on there. And what they've done is they've looked at how they're going to take responsibility for these cars. So what they've come up with, and the way it looks like it's going to go forwards, is we will still insure our cars as normal. And whether we're in driver mode or driverless mode, the computer on the car will be able to tell people when they have an accident. So if there is an accident, the insurance companies will know instantly, because it will be instantly sent through to them, and the insurance company will know straight away whether it was in driver mode or driverless mode. It won't make any difference to you. You will still pay the same insurance. They will be then the ones to sort out the insurance, and they will either take it up with the car people or with us. So it depends on whether it was our fault, if it was in driver mode, or if it was in driverless mode, was it a software or hardware problem. So we'll still have the same insurance. They're hoping the insurance policies will go right the way down because of the cause of accidents will come down.
Yeah.
So hopefully that will be good. So insurance is really, they've sorted that out. They've done a really good job at getting that sorted out, I think, as well.
That's been sorted then, is that, Lynn?
Yeah, it's pretty much done now. I was amazed how quickly they did that. I don't know whether they've had to change legislation for it or not. They've not told us. But no, that is the way forward. That's the way they're saying it's going to go. So this company came to a couple of the meetings. The first meeting, it was a little bit, I think they were still in discussions amongst all the different companies. But by the time we came to the policy meeting, Policy UK meeting, this had all been sort of ironed out.
From January to April, we thrashed it out.
Yeah. So that looks the way it's going to go. Last slide, finally. Oh, I've jumped that one, Ed. I've sort of dealt with two in one. So what's going to happen next? Well, as you can see, we don't know really, is the answer. 15 years ago, they said that we were going to have, by this time now, that we would have nearly 80% electric cars. And that hasn't happened. So I don't know. So they're saying 2020, 2021 is the figure that's being bandied about. But they're not saying what that's going to be. They're not saying whether that's going to be level 3, level 4, or level 5. But they're the figures that they're bandying about. So the sort of cars, people that we've got involved in this, we've got Volvo and Uber working together now. Volvo have also just announced they're going fully electric from 2019. They're not going to have petrol and diesel vehicles anymore. Mercedes trucks are involved. Tesla, Apple have just announced that they're coming up with a driverless car, but they won't say who they're working with. Google aren't Google Cars anymore. They've got a new name. They're called Waymo now, and they've gone from a pod to a minivan. They've decided not to use pods now. They're going to use minivans. Nissan 2020, Toyota 2020. Ford are the ones that are lagging behind. They're saying 2021. So, but we don't know. It could be 2020. It could be 2021, and we don't know. We're not really sure if it's going to be the level 4 or level 5. I'm thinking in this, they're talking about level 4s here, level 3s, level 4s.
Yeah.
But we're not too far off, I don't think. It's an interesting time. Watch this space.
Well, that's been really interesting. It's good to hear it all again. I was at the ADINJC meeting and heard it that first time, but it's really interesting to hear it all again and just how far it's moved on since you've done that as well, with the new announcement from Audi that's just come out about this September. And that's going to level 3, which at one time I remember you saying they were thinking about jumping level 3 completely because of the ifs and buts and doubts about that one between the human taking over from the car. But it looks as though Audi are pushing that one forwards. So it's going to be interesting times to see what happens. And I think I'm sort of embracing it all. I'm quite looking forward to the technology moving forward and being part of that movement forward. That's why I've been looking at the Tesla. So that's quite interesting for me to look at that. We don't have many questions tonight. It's been fairly quiet on the question front. Has anybody got any questions very quickly? We've just got a couple of points that we've got from one person, Andrew. Thanks for typing this in, Andrew. He says that it's likely the working day will be the same. It'll be just working on tasks rather than driving. And it's amazing how much time is taken up for some commuters that, a lot of the time is travelling about. I know people that work within a steel company I do some fleet driving for, and some of their reps spend so much time on the car on the move that all that time when they're on motorways and what have you, that's going to be freeing up time where they'll be able to do some of their office work, and that's what they often complain about as one of their stresses in driving is that they get behind on office work. Well, if that can be taken away and they can do the office work while driving, that's just going to alter their day a little bit.
One of the
Go on, Ben.
That's one of the pain points.
Yeah. Another point that Andrew's brought up is about the revenue. You know, when we were talking about the pods and the revenue that they were making from advertising and what have you, it says that the occupants in the driverless cars will need something to do. Well, depends what they're doing. Like I've just said, if they're working, then they'll probably connect to the internet and be doing stuff like that. But his thoughts are that maybe the vehicle will sell stuff inside it. There'll be, like, I would think there'll be Amazon and people like that where we'll be working on commission paid apps inside the car, maybe, or something like that. That's going to generate revenue.
I haven't even thought of that. I'm sure that's definitely an avenue a lot of people have probably already thought about.
Especially with the Tesla, you got that big computer screen with just like a massive 24-inch television that's in front of you. Surfing the internet, looking and doing your shopping while you're on the way to wherever. You have to go to the supermarket and do the shopping round the trolley. You just order it en route, and then pick it up when you get there.
Sounds good.
So yeah, some interesting stuff. No more questions have come in. So I'd like to thank you all for your time tonight. Just to promote the next webinar, which we're going to hold on the 22nd of August at 8 p.m. This one's going out for the Platinum members this time, but it's going to be on the RLEN syndrome. And this is going to be a special webinar that we do for our Platinum members. So the August one will be bypassing, and then the one after that for general release will be, I'll bring the calendar up, it will be in September, and it will be the last Tuesday, so it'll be Tuesday the 26th of September for the next webinar for general release. We're not too sure what that one's going to be on yet, so keep an eye out on Facebook and whatever you watch for the news flashes and group information coming out, and we'll see you all in September if we don't get a chance to join us for the Platinum one in August. Thanks very much, everybody, for attending, and good night.